call the May Natural Resources Committee meeting. Could we please have roll call?
Harrow,
Here.
McKee,
Here.
Hendricks,
Here.
Hill,
Here.
Woodhouse,
Here.
Fleming.
Here.
And
There's.
Brookins.
Yeah.
You have everybody here, sir.
All right. And did we have notification of the meeting?
Correctly posted, sir.
Awesome. Hey, need to approve the agenda. So is everybody okay with the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
And Mark the second. All right, those in favor of approving the agenda as listed, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Let's see. Public comment. Any public comment online or the chief seats? No public comment.
Mr. Chair, would you like to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Thank you. Going too fast. If anyone has any questions or corrections to the minutes, say so. If not, we'll say they're approved as public. And no, there was no public comment. Okay, so zoning petitions. Looks like we got a lot this month.
Yeah, and there's a little mix up in the folder, which goes with which. I don't know what happened, but between Miranda and I, we had a little mix up. I do want to let you know, the reason it comes across and we have just the parcel numbers in the township is because of the Act 243 or 235. Striking, like anybody that wants to be stricken, that's judicial. And in consultation with Attorney Wendell, he suggested that we do all petitions this way. We can talk about the names once we get in there here, but in the packets and online, just strike everybody so it's not coming across that, oh, we don't have, this one's not named, you know, we have the Tricia Clements one, but then our judge, we strike that one and so that one appears as just no name. And somebody says, can look and say, oh, well, maybe this is a judicial one. So this way, it's a new state law, started April 1st, that any judges, their family, immediate family, retired judges, municipal judges, any of them can have their names legally stricken from public on their, connecting them to an address.
I wondered what was going on.
So this was his suggestion that we do it this way. We can talk about the names once we're here, but he suggested just putting the parcel number and the township and then strike their name on the documents that are posted. But
So at this meeting or after this meeting, it then becomes public record though.
correct. Yes, it does. And we can, right, and that's not an issue. It's the,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Someone would have to search for it then.
right.
Yeah.
So that's why, okay? So the first one that's listed 7, the actual items under 7A is actually not the right one. We're doing the Dayton Township one, which is listed as 7B in the package.
Wait, so explain that again?
I don't know what happened, but our first petition is section 34 of Dayton Township. So what's listed in your committee packet is not the correct, it's not listed correctly. What's listed as 7A is actually 7B.
Okay, so the ones that say 7A in our packet are actually 7B?
Just the one that says the parcel number has a parcel number listed. So we're actually looking at 7B.
So then what's 7B in our packet?
That one's supposed to be Ithaca Township.
Okay, that answers another one of my questions.
The things are just, we don't know, things happened and,
Right.
but if you look at the only thing it is, if we don't have the signed. So 7B is the one we're looking at now.
Okay, got it.
So I'll let
So this is a petition to rezone about 30 acres. It's an existing parcel, just wasn't rezoned probably when it was split off. So it's going to ag residential. They plan on, using it for hunting land with a small cabin on there, recreational weekend use. I did have one neighbor stop in just asking what they were planning on doing with it. I showed him the property. He didn't have any issues with it, but just curious about what was going on.
Am I correct? Basically, all these this month are formality ones. They're places that are already zoning themselves.
I'm not sure.
No,
Okay,
I know we have at least one that's being split.
okay. Which one is that?
The other
The
Dayton
Dayton
Township
one.
Okay,
So this one just got changed to farmland preservation and then it just didn't get fixed as far as the rest of it.
Right,
So it's basically a cleanup of
Right.
what we're saying.
yep, just getting it into compliance now.
Is that the $125 fee then, is that?
Yep.
Yes.
so is it being zoned to R1 or R2?
No, okay.
Ag residential.
Going from ag forestry to ag residential, it's a 30-acre parcel.
Right. I thought one place I saw it listed as R1, another place listed as R2.
That's because of the mix-up in the folder here.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure I know which one we're.
Yeah, I know, I don't, like I said, I'm not sure what happened, but yeah.
So we're doing the one on Kestrel Ridge or not?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
no, yeah, yours is Kestrel Ridge. This is one on
It's on Chicken Ridge.
Chicken Ridge. It's a parcel number, if you look in the full, it's the one listed as parcel number 0083423.
Oh, I know.
We're in Dayton.
So the one you have that weird Ithaca.
Yeah, it's all.
So no, move to Dayton or?
I was looking at this.
I don't know what happened. There was a misnumbering of I don't know. I just noticed it like a few minutes before the meeting started. I didn't have a chance to correct.
So on the agenda, we're on A, but if you look at the folder, it's the ones that are labeled
We
B.
went from B to A now, right? So
A to B, yeah.
who's that first?
Who's on first, what's on second? I don't, like I said, and because there's a lot, it makes it harder. So, yeah, this is just, it's a cleanup. It was zoned ag forestry and it's under 35 acres, so it's supposed to be ag residential.
All right, give me a second.
So this says that the cabin will have electrical, but no water or septic. So
Correct.
what are they doing?
Composting.
Okay,
So they have, we have to, he has to sign an affidavit,
That's a different issue.
non-plumbing issue.
but I just noticed it on the.
Yep.
Okay, any questions from the committee? A little tricky to follow, but it looks like it's basic, what we've been doing all along
Yeah.
is updating the.
Cleaning up things that need to be cleaned up with land sales.
All right, how about a motion to approve then if there's no questions?
I'll make the
Just make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Julie's making the second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving this, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, okay, there's one.
Okay, the next one is actually listed in the committee folder as 7C parcels 016-0411-2000 in Ithaca Township. This is one that was kind of tabled from last month because it hadn't gone to the Ithaca Town Board yet.
So, sorry, the parcel number again?
It's 016-0411-2000.
And it's,
So it's C.
It's,
It's labeled C.
Yep.
In our packet.
in the packet. So
B on the agenda, C in the packet.
I didn't catch those. I didn't realize, I thought I'd put them in.
it's causing me to get mixed up.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
All right.
so, sorry, explain this one again?
This is one where they're splitting off like a middle portion. I mean, this is Michelle Wabasha from Ithaca Township, so I'll let her explain.
So it's owned by Dennis Brenman and he is taking 3 parts of it to sell to Scott Dietzman. He wants to keep the middle parcel, the big parcel. And because none of Mr. Dietzman's land touches the other parcels, they can't go into his, it has to be rezoned. So that's why. So they're going from farmland preservation to residential A2. Because they're all under 5 acres.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a kind of a hot mess and it's weird how they had to split it, but
If you look at the map, you can see it. It's like,
Well,
yeah.
but since it's 2 separate parcels, does not each one need its own rezone?
We did them that way on here. We described them as he's rezoning lots 1 and 3
Right.
of the parcel.
And you can do that, 2 separate parcels as a single rezone request?
Yeah,
You
we did it
can't?
before, yeah.
Okay. I'm just not sure we'd had that come up since I've been here, but as long as it's okay.
Well, it seems fair instead of charging
Yeah.
each parcel.
Oh, yeah,
Because it's the same owner who's buying it.
Right.
That's why
okay.
they just don't touch each other because one is like, let's say on the north side and one is on the south side. So they each have to be separate parcel numbers in the end.
Okay. How about a motion to approve this one? Mark, motion to approve and Richard a second. And any more questions? Comments? Okay, all those in favor of approving this one, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Another confusing.
Welcome to the land of zoning.
Which one's next?
okay, it's the one, in your packet labeled parcel, 7D parcel 014-2044-1000. And I think that one, we have to postpone it because.
Yep, so the landowner misunderstood and got approval to split her, or change her parcels from 4 parcels to 2, but she didn't specifically get the approval for the rezone from the township. So she's going back to the township and this will be next month's agenda
Next month.
with there.
So we're not gonna deal with that one.
Correct,
All right.
postponing that one.
And the next one is listed as agenda, listed as 7D, right? Yes. Nope, where'd you? Okay, I gotta get the right one. Oh,
Yeah, it is 70.
okay, I'm there, all right. So this one, it's Rockbridge.
This one is the one that we just formality to.
Yep, same as Ithaca.
Yeah. They're just splitting a 40 right on the line of the road on Steamboat Hollow. So everything south is gonna be owned by Carrie Norman, and then Colleen MacArthur is retaining the stuff north of Steamboat Hollow. And that portion then is 30 acres, so we have to rezone it out of farmland preservation. And they have it from, I'm sorry, agricultural woodland right now, going to agri-residential.
Okay. Okay, all right,
And that's been approved by Rockbridge.
By Rockbridge, yes.
oh, there it is. All right, so, motion to approve this one. Anyone? Richard's moving to approve, Julie's seconding. Any more questions or discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, the last one is Mr. Bender, and it's the first 7A in your packet.
Just to make sure I'm clear, what's the parcel number?
008-1043-2000.
So this one is on Castro Ridge, splitting off to, looks like about 2.38 acres. I believe this survey's already been recorded.
Yes.
Yep, so the parcel's already split off, keeping the dwelling and shed, and separating it from land behind it. It doesn't look like it's ag field at all, it's all forested land behind.
Okay.
And Mr. Bender's here if you have any questions.
Pardon me?
Mr. Bender's here if you have any
Okay.
questions.
I have a question for, I don't know who it's for. The cover for this one says is R1, and then in the township minutes, it says R2.
We don't have R2 anymore. We just have R1.
It's residential.
We just, when we redid the ordinance online, it's in the unique, our code is R1.
Okay, so maybe we just need to remind the townships that that's the case, or do they still have an R2?
Well, they may have an R2, but we have R1. And the only difference between R1 and R2 is whether you can have, and they're both conditional use permits. Well, two big differences. They can have a trailer with a mobile home with a conditional use permit. That's allowed in either district at the old way. The difference is R1 is supposed to be out in the rural area. R2 is in a subdivision or village.
I'm just saying that it says different things in two different spots.
Well, hopefully we won't have that problem anymore. Let's put it that way.
So are you saying everything from R2 is gonna be switched over to R1? Is that?
I don't. That'd be a lot to change over. I mean, like especially the villages and stuff, and they were done before. It's like I said, the only difference is the description, which is there's no difference in acreages, there's no differences in setbacks. It's the same.
So they would likely just be updated as other things would happen with.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to, we wouldn't charge them or anything,
Right.
but I think it's a simple.
Updated at that time.
Yeah, just we've taken the R1, R2 distinction out of the ordinance. But if it's residential going forward, they come in, we're gonna follow the residential zoning
Just
guidelines.
saying for future reference records, they should both say the same thing.
And we'll, I kind of know the town clerk, so
Pardon me?
I know the town clerk for Dayton, so
Okay.
she works in the building here, so I'll mention to her that, and the town shares on the county board, so.
Okay, all right, so, now we got that, I'm, asking for a motion to approve this one.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Julie is moving to approve it, and Mark is seconding. Any questions, comments? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Done with petitions.
Yeah, thank you for coming, Dale.
Thank you.
Okay. So, well, first of all, I'd like to, okay. Jen, who was our office system tech, is now the zoning sanitation technician. And, which is really great because she's able to step in and, then we've got Noelle, she is the new, Schmidt, she's the new office system tech. This is her second week on the job. And, I'll let her talk a little bit about herself and then.
Yeah, so second week, I don't have a background in zoning. But I was trained in fisheries, so I came from the Fish and Wildlife Service in Alaska. I was there for a year, so I'm just here hoping to learn more about zoning, how the county works, and helping out with their land conservation programs as well. So nice to meet you all.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And, I'll let Jen talk about a few things that,
Yeah, just updates on where we're at for the year. Land use permits, we're at 37 total for the year. We had 18 of those in April, so it's definitely been picking up with the spring. Sanitary, we only issued 3 in April, but I know we've got several on our desks, waiting to be issued. We're at 13 total then for the year so far. That's all I had.
she went to a training last week on, it's on soils, 2-day training up in Rice Lake. She and I have both been out on some, soils investigations. We're trying to get them to call us enough ahead of time so we can go out on them. I was on the septic sanitary permits, the ones that went in. The one, I was able to watch the tank, observe the tank being installed and the measurements on that. We were both gone the next day, so I wasn't there on this actual installation of the field, drainage field, but we have a self inspection report. So they have to write down everything and we have to double check things, make sure things neat. The second one, the tank was installed and Katrina approved it last fall, and then they put in the drainage field, and I think that's been it so far. And I got 2 or 3 conventional ones that came in that I have to, and when I get some help from the guy from the state, making sure I'm checking, make sure things are in there correctly. We are, I have put together a work plan for each all 4 of the staff for land conservation and zoning. It took me a while because of everything going on. So I started with Noelle, figuring she's new, and then just today I went over some stuff, for her, Jen, and then I got the other 2 staff, Corey and Derek, to work through this week.
So Kathy, for all of us to know, what are your typical witness hold points for sanitation inspection?
The tank, what the elevation it's set at, how far what is tank and the drain fields are away from the well and property lines and buildings. Making sure that the tanks and stuff are set at the right height. They have the filter installed correctly. Where the inlet is and the outlet is in the tank. And then the drainage field is, checking the pipe, going to the drainage field and making sure everything in the drainage field is set, the materials are correct.
But my point is that those are things you physically go to see that they did it. Okay.
And then they usually have a survey equipment set up, and then they give me the rod readings, so I make sure that we make sure that things are set. And that's something, if I'm not there, if Jen's there, she can go and take them. She just can't approve them. I just have to be the one to sign off on them.
Great. Thank you.
She and I met with some DNR staff and some other counties in this area of the states. It was a partial day meeting. They were talking about floodplain and shoreline zoning. And so we learned a lot. We've met some contacts. So I've sent one already to have them look at the shoreline issue, those stream restoration project they're looking at on Fancy Creek there on the Houck property and Higgins properties. So that one's a little complicated. So I sent that in to have the gal from the shoreline look at it and see what we need, what we don't, what we're missing, if this can be approved. Because they're trying to restore the stream from the drainage ditch to the actual original stream.
I thought that already had a green light.
Well, it does, but we have to issue the permits for zoning and floodplain. And I just want to make sure that the state sees that everything's been done, so I can just sign off on a permit for them. I'm not real sure about that. We had a call from the DNR, a gentleman up on by Rockbridge on the old Clark property off of County D decided to dig out the old drainage ditches and put the oil all over it's all in the floodplain. And yeah, he's gonna he's gonna get quite a big fine from the DNR for it. So, I mean, these drainage ditches this whole field was abandoned probably 25 years ago. And now this new owner thinks he could just, yeah, so he's in a little bit of trouble. He just went ahead and dug ditches and didn't get permission from anybody. And so DNR's on it, so. The other thing is I'm going to be, Attorney Wendell is going to have a meeting every week, time available every week for just sitting down with county staff to work on issues. And so he's coming over Thursday morning and we're gonna talk about things and some of the things we're talking about, the Gotham campers, what's going on there. The two gentlemen in Aiken Township that have done building and stuff without all the necessary permits and possibly put in septic stuff without permits. And we've been trying to, so I want to pin that down. What a week we've got to step forward and start issuing fines on those because it's because we haven't, and he's the one that's got to do that. We have to make sure we're doing it correctly, but also that we get it done because it's not fair to other people. And then there's like the conditional use permit for this trailer. Came up. They were allowed to have a temporary trailer for 3 years on a property in Richland Township. And August was the 3 years and the trailer is still sitting there with, just falling apart. And the not the current technical landowner, but the one that has holds the land contract, wants that trailer gone. If he gets it back, he doesn't have to do that.
So Mr. Wendell's just gonna give a recommendation on how to.
Right, and some of the stuff that, in the thing, it says the corporation council will be the one that'll be helping us issue the fines. And the other one is, we've talked about, we're supposed to be able to issue citations for people who don't return their septic maintenance forms, their 3-year, and we haven't done that because we don't know what we're supposed to do. So just having us work with Jen and I to work through the process on how we issue citations. They did in the past, and I just don't know how to go about doing it. So we're going to establish some policies on that. So that's a lot for zoning, but we're getting there. It's going to take us a while. I got a good crew. So as far as land conservation, we had a tree sale, the tree pickup this past weekend. We still have some trees available, so if anybody wants to see what we have available, I have a list. I put it on our Facebook page. If you get to the Facebook page, please share it. I'll probably send this list back out to the department heads and so they can pass it on to their staff. And if we don't get rid of the trees, then we'll probably end up planting some on the county land.
We're doing what?
Plant them on the county land.
Okay.
With Anastasia and some other staff, they held their last week held the second producer-led group. Weren't as many producers there this time, but we have a couple people that are interested in, Aaron Wanicke's one of them. He's gonna be trying to talk to some of his neighbors and we're gonna try to give them some names of some people to pull together, like a bigger, maybe not just a smaller watershed, but take like, say, Pine and Willow, and maybe a little bit of Bear, or Mill, whatever, and then make a partial watershed or partial county setup. See if we can get some people, landowners talking together. Unless, if Anastasia had anything else to say about that?
No. No, she, at her last check-in, though, she was really happy with the engagement that she started to build with the staff here on the land conservation side. And both Juneau and Sauk counties have, I think there's 3 watershed groups she's working with there, and really excited that something's coming together because there's a lot of opportunities, not only for education, but the producers themselves. It's right. I mean, we talk about self-regulating versus regulation, and these watershed groups really help that self-regulation part. And I know she's doing a couple different research trials over in those counties with those watershed groups. I'm really excited about having those same opportunities here for people to try new things. So really excited about the opportunity.
Derek's just working on designs, and he's working on getting his job approvals. So he can sign off some things to himself, but he's been working, getting some designs done. We're working with Kelly Neitzel from Department of Ag, State Department of Ag. Corey is working on making sure people are getting their nutrient management plans in, and working on them getting their soil tests and stuff so they can get them done. And she's working on farmland preservation monitoring. That's all I have. I've got Scott Bushy and Crystal Bailey from NRCS are here. They can maybe give an update on the conservation things on their end. United Natural Resources Conservation Service.
Yeah, so I'm Josh. I think I've been here before. So made it up today. We had our conservation stewardship program ranking deadline last week. So we should find out about funding on that here this week. We had about 16 applications in our county. Most of them were forestry, but the rest had a few big agricultural applications. We had some additional EQIP pre-approvals, so the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. Excuse me. We had 3 more picked up in Richland County. It was kind of a down year versus the last couple of years. So hopefully that will pick up in the future. Letters for annual compliance reviews have been sent out. That's the 5% spot checks for anybody in the county participating in any USDA programs. So we'll be doing those field reviews soon. We're supposed to start those once planting's complete. I see there's been some planting done, so we'll be getting out those soon. Other than that, there is a second batching for our EQIP or RCPP, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. The only fund pool that affects Richland County is the Trout Unlimited fund pool. So we do have one prospective project for that we are going to be looking at this week. Other than that, we're going to be busy certifying practices and planning for the future. But all I got, unless anybody has any questions.
Is your funding affected by the federal freeze or whatever, and how's that?
It has been. In the past few years, we've had an Inflation Reduction Act money, which has resulted in a lot more projects picked up. That kind of got, at least for the new, anything new, it kind of got put on hold. I don't really know what's going to happen with that. Kind of why it's been a little bit less funded this year than in the past, but yeah, we're kind of waiting to see how a lot of that shakes out.
Thanks. Got a question for Kathy. On that septic without the permit, is that a contractor doing that work, or how does that happen?
We don't know.
So just there's a septic system.
Well, what happened was this this gentleman had a permit to put up a hoop house. And we got a call from the landowner across the road. We went out and looked at it, and he had all kinds of pipes sitting there by where the hoop house was gonna go, and he leveled out an area. I'm like, what's going there? It's gonna be a parking lot. Okay, but if you're gonna build anything, I remember saying this, you need a permit. Okay. 2 weeks later, there's concrete poured, there's pipes going up through the concrete. And before you get out there, it's all enclosed, like a big house.
Oh.
So yeah, we have no idea where anything is going or what the pipes are for or anything.
So he just contracted this, or did it himself?
I think he probably did it with himself mostly.
I would guess that he did it himself.
Okay.
Most contractors aren't
Right, I
gonna
was
do
gonna
it.
say,
There's
if
no
the
permits.
contractor did it, then that
Yeah,
would be,
they're not
you
gonna
know.
do it without.
Yeah.
permits.
So yeah, it's an Amish gentleman who just went ahead and cops have gone out there. We had it was served by the cops, sheriff's department. Mr. Wendell went out there. In fact, when he was burning before that, we didn't know that, but he burnt down the trailer house that'd been there. DNR came on and he said DNR could not legally come onto his property. And And he just kind of, she sent him the letter and he sent back something and said, well, this doesn't pertain to him, basically. So, yeah, told Katrina via a letter. So, yeah, we've been fighting with this since at least September, starting,
What a mess.
yeah.
Do you expect any more events in that would come back to this committee for us to have to deal with, or is this gonna be?
Well, I think we start with Attorney Wendell and then see
Right.
what happens.
Okay,
The other thing that's in the packet I have is listed, basically, you wanted information on the land information grants.
Yeah.
And so I put in, copies of what it says in the grant applications, what things can be used for. So I've got, one is the strategic grants instructions and one is the base grant instructions. So,
yeah, I had asked for this last month, because in the past, there was maybe uncertainty on what exactly you could spend the grant money on, and I just wanted to understand how that worked. Well, sometimes be careful what you ask for, right? Because I looked at this and I still don't understand it.
yeah, basically, they prefer we don't use it on staff, the grant funding.
Yeah.
Unless it's specific for training or used on, it'd be specific projects that use ours. So like, that's why we contract, because it's specific things that they can do.
Are you, but for now, going forward, you feel like you're following the guidelines and we're good?
Right. And I don't think they weren't following the guidelines before, but the money was, instead of going for what it was going to pay a staff person that was working in zoning to do some of this stuff, but then we weren't able to do other things that we really needed to get done, like working on the LiDAR, working on orthophotos, working on some of the base stuff that people are actually looking at, not necessarily.
Are you working with Mr. Wendell to make sure we're doing it right, or with someone else to?
We're not, but when we send it in, they tell us if it's something we
Okay.
can,
Okay.
we can do.
Because this, if I remember, this general issues, I can remember when Bindle was still here, that there was awareness that we had to be careful.
Right,
Yeah.
because I think they were paying a bunch of his salary and Lynn's salary, this zoning administrator, and some of it, to me, what he was questioning whether it could count towards the grant. That was his fear.
Well, thank you for putting that in our packet, but it was hard for me to follow.
That was the best I could find, because
Okay.
I looked at the rules, the statute on it, and it's clear as mud.
Okay,
So, that's all I've got.
all right. All right, so I guess, Adam, you're up.
All right. So, included in the packet this morning was the, extension report. There's a lot of stuff that's in there. Just a couple quick highlights. Again, I wanted to highlight, Anastasia said that it's just been great trying to work with the watershed group. One of the things that they're doing, not in Richland County, but with some of the other ones, is looking at some cover crop stuff. They're doing some camelina trials. So it's a new cover crop, the potential for Wisconsin. She had a field day a couple of weeks ago in Juneau County. And she did indicate there was actually a couple of producers from Richland County that went up there. But they're doing some nitrogen leaching and capture rates, camelina through the winter. So that's kind of an interesting project she's working on. Highlighted that, Get Real was a couple ago. So if anybody showed up and helped with Get Real, hopefully had some fun. That was the financial simulation for the high school students that Sarah led. We also, from the 4-H side, they had a discovery day, and there was 78 youth participants at that 4-H discovery day. So those are just some of the quick highlights. I'm not going to go through this whole report because you guys can read through that. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about to you guys today is the Richland County listing session. If you guys remember, we signed that MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. One of the things we have to do from the county side is do a listing session. So I put together a rough outline. Right now, I'm planning on posting that on May 21st. From 5 just to an hour, be a posted meeting, kind of following the example that you guys have done for like the campus when, you know, so here's kind of an outline of the educators. So my proposal is, you know, have an overview of current staff and structure of extension in the county relationship. Have the educators then present on their current programming and their program priorities. And then open it up for comments from the audience with prompts of where is extension programming not being addressed and what audiences or partners are we missing? So trying to focus on those two kind of questions. Where are some of the gaps with our current programs? And then from there, I would take all those comments and summarize them. Then I would plan on taking those comments and having individual conversations with each of the educators. See how that actually fits in with our programming that we do and the priorities that we have set. And some of the ideas that might not fit along with those, what are some opportunities that we could try to find resources for those county partners to make sure that we meet those needs.
And when were you saying?
May 21st, I believe that is a, give me a second.
Wednesday.
A Wednesday night. So,
What time?
5 to 6 p.m. So I just wanted to have conversations that sound appropriate for you guys. Do you think there's something more that we need to be doing or that?
To start. I've got a campus reconfiguration meeting at 6.
But it wouldn't say that it would be a meeting that you guys have to attend. I wouldn't.
Understood.
So I just want to make that clear that we would still put the caveat in the meeting that there might be board members and those types of things. But would highly encourage you guys if you can make it to be.
Right.
What day is that again?
Wednesday, the 21st.
Day after the county board.
Pardon me?
Day after county board.
Right.
Yeah.
Will it be recorded?
I hadn't planned on recording it, but if it's something that you want, we can do that.
Yeah, it's Wednesday.
Gotcha.
It's been a while since I looked at the MOU, but as I recall, we need to be up to speed on that and stay.
Yeah, so the report that I would generate would come back to you guys then in the June meeting. So you would have a synopsis of all the comments of the meeting.
Okay. This is the first year I helped out at Get Real, the economic reality thing. And I just have to say, I thought it was really well organized. The content and the information that they were trying to cover, as well as the logistics for the day, I thought went really well. I plan on doing it again.
Good.
What table were you at?
The credit card,
The what one?
credit cards.
Spent too much by the time they got to me.
Yeah.
But they'd have their TV bill paid, or, you know, they got cable. By the time they got to me, they couldn't afford a TV.
Reality, right?
See, and you were at the beginning of the credit card. I was at the end making sure they paid it off.
All right. Anything else on extension?
No, those are the two things I really wanted to kind of highlight, just to, you know, again, have a big long written report in there for you guys to read, but those highlights, I just really appreciate the support you guys given us. Are there any other questions about extension for me?
What school districts were at Get Real?
I don't know for sure off the top of my head. I believe it was Richland Center, Ithaca,
Riverdale,
Riverdale.
River Valley.
In River Valley.
Yeah, because they had in Weston and Eagle School hadn't been there in last couple times, I believe.
I know that Kikupa was going to, but they had trouble with getting enough teachers to come with.
Yeah.
So they didn't come this year. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Next, we have you wanted Mr. Rumler to come and talk, county surveyor.
Okay, sounds good.
It's number D. Number D,
Right.
the letter D.
So I am Todd Rumler. I'm the county surveyor, been the county surveyor since 2016 when I was appointed. Before I get going on my report, I just want to remind everybody that there is the 2025 PLSS Forum coming up at the Phoenix Center on May 15th. Everyone's invited to attend. I do have some brochures. If you haven't seen them before, you do have to RSVP. This forum is put on by the Wisconsin County Surveyors Association and the State Cartographer's Office. And if you wondered about what surveyors do, or why there's a need for a county surveyor, or why is the state pumping all this grant money into the various counties to update land records, this forum would be a great way to get some of those questions answered. Because the gentleman from the state that oversees the grant program is actually going to be in attendance, and he has a section in that seminar too. So that might be a good time to ask some of those questions. And as a matter of fact, you get free lunch. Lunch is paid for at the Phoenix Center. And then we actually go out and visit a section corner marker right here in town. It's behind the Phoenix Center on Congress Street. So we walk over there, it's about a block away, and take a look at the section corner and why these markers need to be perpetuated, and why it's important to keep spending money to that end. And I just want to congratulate Jen on becoming the zoning administrator. Glad to see it. Jen will do a good job. I'm glad she decided to take it on. So. Okay, so my basic contract with the county is to spend 2 hours per month filing surveys and scanning surveys that come in every month. So that's my basic responsibility. So I get 2 hours per month to do that. Sometimes it takes 2 hours, sometimes it takes more than 2 hours, depends on how many surveys come in during the month. Beyond that, I do have a county surveyor's budget, so I can spend more time on other things. So I did give Kathy a copy of my invoice for the first 4 months of the year here, and I don't know did you share that with the committee at all, or okay. All right, so we'll just go down my invoice briefly here, and you can get kind of an idea of what I'm doing and what I'm charging the county for. So I know back in January we had a meeting, I had a meeting with the zoning staff, so that was an hour of time beyond my normal 2 hours. So, so there was a charge for that. I didn't have January office hours, or the 2 normal hours that I would get paid for to file surveys, scan surveys, et cetera, because we were locked out of the Register of Deeds office. There was that transition from the previous Register of Deeds to the new, and apparently they couldn't get into the office or the vault or so on. So apparently that wasn't necessarily planned for. But anyway, I didn't hold office hours in January. In February, I had, it took me about an hour and a half to go through the surveys that came in and index them and scan them. A lot of my work is questions that come up from the real property administrator as she's going through and looking at deeds that come in for recording, or looking at surveys and trying to fit them into the GIS system and so forth. Questions come up. So there's been a few charges for that. Julie contacted me wondering why doesn't this survey close? Of course, all surveys and legal descriptions have to start at a point of beginning, as you know, and they have to come all the way around and close back exactly on the point. If they don't, there's mathematical error in there somewhere, and that will prevent that parcel or that survey or that deed from being correctly mapped. So very often she'll call me and say, something's wrong with this one, can you take a look at it? So I do take a look at those. I do the calculations on them. I very often can find out where that error occurred. And that goes into the next step then. If I do find an error, then it's my job to contact the surveyor that did that work, either by writing a letter, sending an email, making a phone call, and tell them, hey, I think you have an error here. This needs to be corrected. And there's different ways of getting that corrected. In the case of a certified survey map or a deed, that has to be corrected by an affidavit of correction that actually gets recorded in the Register of Deeds office. If it's a plat of survey, that's not a legal document. That can just be corrected by the surveyor revising the survey and sending in a new copy for filing. Very often questions come up from the GIS maps, because I don't know how much experience everyone has with those, but very often they're not perfect to begin with, let's put it that way.
And there's this thing at the beginning that says these are, do not use these are not.
Yeah, there's a big disclaimer on there saying these are not for legal purposes or anything like that. And in fact, they have no legal standing in a court of law. If someone tries to bring a case for adverse possession or anything like that using the county parcel mapping, they're gonna get laughed out of court because they have no legal standing. But nevertheless, people rely on them as being absolutely correct for where the property lines are, and they can't do that. So sometimes disputes arise, and as county surveyor, very often I get involved in those. And I look at the GIS mapping, look at the deeds, and if there's mistakes in the mapping, I will contact Julie and we'll work to get them corrected. In this last quarter, we did have one where the deeds called for the center of a creek. Well, the GIS mapping showed the lines between the two parcels probably 50 feet east of the creek. So the two owners were going at it already. So I looked at the deeds, it should be the center of the creek, both deeds called for it. And I contacted Julie, we got the GIS mapping corrected, and then I followed up with a letter to both owners saying GIS mapping was incorrect, as very often it is. And here's where we revised it. It's not a survey, obviously, but we revised it to follow the center of the creek as close as we can. In the meantime, they could get a survey done if they wanted to, but that got corrected, and I haven't heard anything more from anybody there. Another issue that came up was out on Jungle Bar Lane. There was an issue between where the GIS was depicting the property lines versus where Jungle Bar Lane actually was. And there was a concern that there wasn't actually access to a parcel because of where they were showing the property lines in the GIS mapping. And that did get corrected now, as far as I know. There wasn't an issue there. The lines in the GIS map were simply incorrect. So we got that one taken care of. There's been a few certified survey maps I've had to look at for the closure. In other words, they didn't close back on the point of beginning like they were supposed to. So I did send out a couple of emails to other surveyors saying that here's where I think the error is. You need to do an affidavit of correction to get that taken care of. So
That's when we have been, it's helped some, hasn't it, to have the plat review look at them or not?
you're talking about the state review?
Yeah,
Yes, that's helped quite a bit. Now all certified survey maps go through state plat review up in Madison for review. And that's one of the things that the state checks is, will that description or that map close back on the point of beginning like it's supposed to? And the clients or the owner has to pay that additional fee that it is $100 or
yeah,
something.
and we're waiting for some bill from them to pay some of them that.
So it's $100 well spent. In other words, we can prevent some of these mistakes getting recorded in the Register of Deeds office before they actually, or we can get them corrected before they become permanent in the permanent record, and they have to go through this affidavit of correction procedure to get that corrected. So that's been well worth the money to have the state reviewing those. I think that pretty much sums up the first 4 months of the year here. Does anybody have any questions for me or? Sure.
I've got a question. You were just talking about how the state is reviewing those now, that $100 fee. Is that something new that is that required now?
It is required.
Okay.
Yep, all certified survey maps, they do come into the zoning office first. And of course, the zoning office still has to check them for compliance with Richland County ordinances. But the state is checking those maps now to comply with state standards that are in the state statutes. And The good thing about that is the zoning office, the folks in the zoning office were previously in charge of reviewing those certified survey maps, but they're not surveyors. And I don't expect them to be completely familiar with all the statutes, administrative codes that surveyors have to adhere to. So it's great that those can go to the state, and the state is taking care of that section of the compliance anyway. And they'll draft a letter and say, and send to the zoning office and to the surveyor, this is what you need to fix on here before this can be recorded.
So we get those. Katrina set that up, I don't know, last fall, was sometime. And let you guys approved going to do that.
So when did it actually start? I mean, obviously that's when it started for us, but when did it start statewide, I guess?
It's, for certified survey maps, it's optional. Subdivision plats have been going through plat review up in Madison since probably the 1960s. But certified survey maps, which basically have the same legal authority as a subdivision plat, they're still optional. That's up to each county to decide how they want to handle that. Some counties do their own reviews like Richland County used to do. But I know Crawford County now, for a number of years, has been having the state do the review. And while we were kind of in that transition, I was doing the review of the CSMs, which I don't necessarily have time to do that, but I was doing it to get us through. But now the state's doing it, that takes a big burden off the zoning office to have to try and do those reviews, so.
I have a question too. I first learned about this GIS mismatch issue on our property. Showed our chicken coop in our neighbor's property, and I knew something was wrong. But how big is there any talk about getting them aligned, or getting GIS? Is it capable of being aligned with the actual survey information?
Well, that's a great question. I'm gonna have to get up on my soapbox here for a minute. So Richland County, just to give a little background, Richland County used to have Lynn Newkirk in the zoning office, at least doing that part-time. So we had a person right here in house that was able to deal with these issues as they came up. And if something came up where it was obvious there was a clear error in the GIS mapping, Lynn could go in there and actually make those changes right then and there. Now we contract out to MSA, and not to say anything bad about MSA, because they've been super responsive on anything that we need changed. The problem that we have right now is that as surveys are getting done out there, and people are paying for these surveys and they're getting filed and everything, there isn't time or budget or personnel necessarily to take that survey data and get it integrated into the GIS. So once a parcel is surveyed and now we actually have some real world data on where those boundary lines are, that's not getting put into the GIS. It's not getting integrated. Because one, we don't have anybody in-house that can do that. And two, we're contracting out to MSA and they've got other things that they have to do as far as what their contract allows them to do. So ultimately the goal would be to have a full-time person here just doing that and being able to work with all the other departments on mapping parcels, like the zoning for one.
Understood. And I guess I'm of the same mind. Maybe this is a plug for our budgeting process to maybe see if we can bring it GIS in-house. Who knows? But thank you.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions?
I have one too. Last month when we were having a discussion, one thing that we noted, and one of the reasons we wanted you to come in was just to give a brief explanation of survey language. I think that was something that Steve mentioned, that some of the things, the terms and that we just wanted to have a little knowledge of to help us understand too when we're looking at these maps. Is there anything you can point us to or just information you can give us?
I know you guys will be looking at, in particular, at certified survey maps. That's generally what's come before this committee. And I guess if you have any specific, I mean, surveyors kind of do have their own language as far as what we're showing on maps, and if you're not used to looking at those maps every day, yeah, I can see why people would have questions. I don't know if I have any specific answers on that. I guess if you guys are, since I'm county surveyor, if you guys are looking at a CSM for possible approval or rezoning, and you have a question on it, you can certainly just drop me an email and I'll certainly answer it. You know, usually what the surveyors are showing on there is pretty straightforward. You're seeing the boundary lines of the area they're trying to survey. But beyond that, I mean, there's lots of annotations and notes on there if you have questions about those. It's tough to give a generalized answer on that. I'd be more than happy to, you know, give you specific information on something. If you send me the CSM or, you know, say, what does this mean? Or why are they pointing to this or something like that? I certainly do
I
that.
don't know what your even question is last month.
Well, and most of the time, we don't really have to know the definitions of all things, but occasionally something comes up where a term is part of our discussion, and then we're like, you know, deer in the headlights.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how it'd be nice to have some reference or something to help us a little bit.
Yeah. Well, if that comes up in the future, you know, you're welcome to email me and I can get you an answer back and let you know what that means. I hesitate to just give a general answer and say, this is what it means. It comes down to context sometimes, how something is used or referred to. And if I have the specific situation, I can probably give a better explanation.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next is the water study.
All right, I put in there, what the results were and the maps for the last ones we've done, the October of 2020 and October 2021, what we tested for. So you have that information. The second, it'll probably be sometime later this month before the Driftless Area Group finds out about the grant they applied for. And then, and I wasn't at the meeting, there was the Southwest Regional got a grant or something to pay to do some testing, water testing. And one of the things, it tests for several of the things that we test for, but it doesn't test for fecal coliform. And so I did ask that question, is that going to be looked at or not, because sometimes that's one thing that the landowner, I mean, that tells you right then if there's an issue with their well, the structure of their well. You know, if there's coliform if there's a bacteria in their well, certain types, that means that they could have a cracked well cap, an unsealed well cap. There could be, you know, what's draining to their well area. So that was one of the things I asked about, and they're going to look into possibly doing it, but it tests for all sorts of different things. And in that case, it'd be unlike the one that would be going through the Dawes one, the Driftless Area one. They would be actually going out there, somebody would be going out there collecting the well sample.
I had one question on the report you put in here. I was surprised it said that they weren't tracking to be able to tell someone, oh, you've got E. coli in your well.
Well, they do. I mean, how do I say?
Says.
Well, okay, if you have E. coli, if you had E. coli in your well, they were sending a letter right away saying you needed to do something.
Okay.
The lab was. We just weren't told that it was Steve Carroll's well that tested positive for it.
So if the homeowner did nothing, we wouldn't know that.
Right.
Okay.
And it's more for the anonymity. Some people don't want people to know, they want to know for themselves, but for us, it was just general area where things were testing high in certain things.
Okay.
So we don't know whose well, we don't know it's Steve Carroll's well. It's somewhere in Steve Carroll's area, but we don't know if it's Steve Carroll.
So the assumption is that they will identify and tell them. But we still wouldn't know.
Correct, because we had a couple that, and they actually called us and, hey, we got notice that this is, and they gave us some suggestions and they wanted, and they were actually told certain things to do and they could call us for help too, but then they had the ability to retest it after they did like a bleaching or check for things. Couple was, the one, the gal goes, her well was in her basement. And she actually had a cracked well cap.
I do know, talking to, Kevin Masaryk at Stevens Point, what they do the well water, like the well water program. So the one way that they were able to do some of the larger area maps is not, they couldn't give out individual data information because individual wells, because they couldn't, like, they didn't want to have neighbors complain, well, your well's dirty, so my well's gonna get contaminated, which does happen, right? And then people were, when they first started, were not gonna send in samples for them to post on the larger scale so like if you go to UW Stevens Point, you can look up well water testing for any areas in the state. And so that's one way that they use then to collate the data more for a bigger community looking picture while still keeping individuals' information and data separate and anonymous. So they kind of tried to do it by townships versus pinpoint area.
I mean, obviously, if you're gonna collect all this data, you need to be able to identify issues and trends, even if you anonymize it, right?
Right, well, that's what I mean, that's why they use such a large, like, they'll use a township
They go down a section.
section or something,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's not
Okay,
down to the specific parcel number that they're putting up there.
okay.
So you can still get a good feel for what's happening, but they don't wanna get it so specific that.
Gotcha.
Because some
they don't
people,
go to their
won't-
scopes.
some people won't participate if they know that,
Yeah,
there's some people that, hey, I don't want people to know what's going on at my place. It's,
Sure.
there's some people that they get freaked out by that, so.
I'm sorry, when did you say we'd hear on this one?
The one through the Driftless Area Group, probably the end of May.
End of May, okay.
Because it was due the end of March, and they said 6 to 8 weeks. This other one, it's been approved, but it's working on the logistics and how they're, so we're gonna have another meeting on that to figure out how they're gonna do it. And whereas the Dawes one is like a 1-day shot, so we know on this day, this is what the results were. Because it can change from day to day, whereas the other one is going to be, it may take, 2 or 3 weeks to go through,
And that's the one where they're not trying to do coliforms? Yeah,
as far as we know,
Yeah.
but they may look into it. They're looking into that. Because to me, that's important because, yeah, you can know about all the other chemicals, which is nice to know, but it doesn't tell you also, I mean, that those are dangers, but immediate danger, if you've got a well contaminated with E. coli, you wanna look at some other things specifically.
but then they'd have the same logistics challenges as the DAWs where you gotta get it to the lab within a certain amount of time.
Right, and that's the question, yeah, that one's the one that's time sensitive.
Right,
It has to be with so many hours of taking the well sample.
okay.
Are you gonna talk more about this whole?
Well, I mean, I guess how specific do you wanna get?
I was just wanting you to scroll to that part where it's talking about the nitrates. The water.
Which part of the,
When it's doing this, we're on Springwell, like when I scroll down, there's a map of Wisconsin, and then it's showing where, keep going.
oh, the map there?
Yeah. Oh, a little bit more. Yeah, right there. Yeah, I was like, what's being done about some of that? Like, especially when somebody is an out. Like where, I'm just curious.
We've put them in touch if they've come in, because we don't know who they are until they come in and talk to us, you know, send in, but we've put them in touch with like the lab and some other folks and how to.
So are they, like, obviously the runoff issues and stuff, what happens? I mean, like.
I don't
City
know,
more, there's a lot of more.
yeah, and I don't know how to get the nitrates out. It may be that, it's to let them know that there may be an issue, and then they, some people have gone, I mean, there's other parts of the state that it's really bad, and they've actually had to go to buying water to drink, because it's not something that can be easily filtered out, I don't think.
That's what I've been doing for 22 years.
That's, he knows all
Like,
about
'cause
it.
you're down there.
Yeah, he's on the sand part.
Yeah, we do too. It's just a concern and people have brought it to my attention, so I just thought I'd bring it up.
And it's
It's
important
obvious.
that we know that there's a problem. This is from 2021, so this is old information.
Yep.
And we're putting fertilizer on there, you know, every year. So
And yeah, we've been, you know, you try to work with landowners to, producers to reduce, you know, do nutrient management planning, reduce what you're putting on, seeing what you actually need. And in the sands area, like where Robert is, you know, it goes,
I get my well tested every 3 to 5 years, and I've always been between E and F every time.
wow.
and it's not something you just clean out.
And I've got a reverse osmosis filter on, and I'm still testing an E,
Mm-hmm,
isn't it?
no,
Well, and again, in theory, this is why, you know, we talk about on the nutrient management plans and farmland things where there are guidelines, but it's voluntary. You know, it's not mandatory that farms do that. And we'd like to try to get the percentage of farmland in Richland increased that are doing a nutrient management plan. That's kind of like how it's going to help, right?
eventually, but it's gonna, like where he's at, it's just gonna,
Yeah, if you're living next to a cave, well, it's pretty much
you know,
impossible.
You're right. Some places it's just bad luck on geology. But in general, though, we can help by incorporating practices that minimize how much is getting in.
And it's also a question of how many CAFOs that we have in our county. And at some point, if we're testing our water and we see that we have high nitrates, we have to say, is this how we want to continue? Because there's a balance between, you know, having all these CAFOs and then having accessible clean water for our residents too, so.
and like I said, I don't know if we can put a more, I know if we can, I don't know if there's a question from Mr. Wendell, if we can put moratoriums on new CAFOs or not. I don't know if we're legally allowed to do that, and that's a question for,
No, but that's why it's so critically important to test our water. And this is telling us where we are at least, so take action if necessary.
If I'm interpreting this correctly, by the number of wells that have been surveyed in 2020, it looks to me that 23% of the wells that were surveyed were a level D, so a minimum of 5% or higher. So, you know, I think that I've asked previously, like, how many wells do we have? If 23% are level D or higher, how many wells are not being tested that are being used?
okay.
You know,
If you use how many septics we have in the county, that's probably about how many wells we have.
okay,
So we do how many septic reports every year?
This year is 1,400, last year was 1,700, so I'd say maybe 4,500, rough estimate.
Rough of septic
they're
systems.
estimating about 4,500 septic systems.
Well, and if these wells that were tested are random like they say, you would assume that the percentage of all the wells is a similar percentage.
If the sampling rate is high enough.
Yeah.
If the sampling rate
Is high.
aligns with
Yeah.
At 4,500, but if there's approximately 4,500 and how many?
68 were tested.
68 were tested, that's a pretty small sample size.
Yeah, we wanted 100, and that's what we got.
Yeah.
And that was paying for the whole thing, so.
Right.
Or if you give her half.
Mine too.
Well, that, if we get it, that's something we're talking about, yeah. That's what the grant, and if we can get these other people to test with this other project, they're looking at trying to do, through the Southwest Tech program, they're looking at, I thought like 400 in Richland County, they'd like to test. Whether they'll get it or not, I don't know. Well, will we get it? I would love to be able to test that many wells.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we ready to talk about the rental fees?
So I don't know how, we're starting January 1st, it'll be $25.
Yeah. I guess my initial question is, for those folks that have already done the conditional use permit, they've paid $500. If we do some kind of a credit, whether it's a year, 5 years, or whatever, is that a big burden for you guys record keeping to keep track of who is getting that credit?
Since we, and kind of, this year, we've only had one. We only had one.
Understood, but I mean for all the prior ones.
How far are we going back?
How far, before that, it was like 21 was the last one we had, if I remember the data.
Okay, no problem.
What's that?
That's not a problem.
Right, if
Right.
there's only a couple, it won't be a problem.
Okay, so in other words, if we agreed, you know what, everyone who's already spent $500, let's give them.
I would say within the last couple of years, because you go further, we started talking about the change in it like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
So you're saying there's some before that, but the ones that since our discussion, there's only been. just
Yeah,
handful.
right, I went back to 2020 and we had one for that.
wow.
They
Okay.
came and got actual initial use.
Yeah. So what does the committee think? How much credit should we give folks that have done the CUP?
Let's say $100.
$100?
Or, I don't care.
4 years worth, let's say. And that's what I was getting at. Was that easy enough for you guys to keep track of them?
Yeah, because unless we have something else before January 1st, basically, it's like one,
Okay.
Or, they paid $500.
So take
Yeah.
times, just credit them out.
That's a lot of money.
It is.
Yeah.
So I would say maybe $300.
Oh, you're saying this
For,
much?
for this one that came in since the first of the year, that'd be, yeah.
So you're throwing out the idea of $300 credit. In other words, a 12-year credit.
That's nice.
I don't have a problem with that.
We thought that'd be easier, just let them know when they're due to pay again.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it.
Any more thoughts on?
Would we do the same credit for the person who just purchased it versus somebody who purchased theirs 2 years ago?
And what are the odds that somebody is gonna continue to own and rent it out
For
for the next
12 years. Yeah, the same person. Yeah,
You could almost waive
Ownership
that
on
fee.
those.
Just almost waive it and say, your conditional use permit gives you a free pass basically, but, cause if it's $500, that's, what is that, 20 years basically, but, it's 20 years, $25.
1 year.
fees. Yeah, that's a lot of.
Can we just give them the money back? Or do we
issue
have-
a refund versus giving a credit.
The other thing that goes into that is. you
And
can't-
that way it's all clean and.
Especially
Can we
with just
do
a
that?
couple of these cases, that might
Clients, right, so lessen it, so you go back and give everybody a credit that the just,
Right.
I mean, it's hard, it's a great idea to give a credit, but That day was the day of doing business.
Yeah. It was, that's what the circumstances were at that time.
But with this last one, we knew we were changing.
Yeah.
Not this last one, it
Yeah.
doesn't seem fair
Yeah.
to charge them 5%.
We just had to do it because that's what our current
Yeah.
policy was.
But
Yeah.
that one was.
It also doesn't seem fair for people who did the right thing, because if we only issued, let's say, 5 in the last 5 years, or how many ever,
We've had like,
we know we have 100 Airbnbs out there in our county, at least. So, or short-term rentals. So you don't want to penalize people for doing the right thing. Those were the people that came in and did the right thing.
yeah, I think that we had 2021 and this one, that's it. That's all we've had.
I'm surprised we didn't have more than that. It seems like we did, which is why we got this discussion going. Maybe it's because we knew there were a lot of them out there that hadn't come forward, and I don't know, I just find it, you don't want to penalize these people. Those are the people that did the right thing. And it's only a handful of people, so I guess I don't know what we are able to do, whether credit is our only option, or can we issue the refunds? Whatever we decide is appropriate.
Thoughts from you guys, Trish, and others?
Well, I don't disagree. I just want to throw out there, what precedent are you setting when you
Yeah.
increase funds for the next?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So just throw that out there, right? It might not be this issue, it might be something else in the future.
Yeah. Need to be mindful of that.
do you want me to,
Create precedent for other.
Yeah, I mean, I get that too, but the difference between $500 and $25, I doubt we're gonna have something so drastic. But again, maybe that's
The
something,
zoning fee change dropped down almost half, right? To rezone just a simple ag forest to
well, no, that's only if,
for the exceptions.
to bring it back into compliance, right? But we were. like-
It's only where the boundaries don't change that we've lowered that.
Right, but that didn't happen before you lowered that?
We discovered we had all these problems, so we.
it did happen. We were charging people the full,
Right, that's my point, Fred.
Policy at the time, and when people were doing the right thing, as we're saying here, they were doing the right thing, and they knew they were willfully doing the right thing. It does create a conundrum
Mhm.
of crediting people well into the future creates other problems as well.
Right.
Change in ownership, for example, things like that. And I think that there's the administrative part, but there's also, the precedence is important. Generally, it's a little tough to accept that we're gonna go back and change something because people did the right thing. That was still the right thing to do.
It was, but there was like, 95 of them that didn't, or whatever. That's my point.
I understand.
Those people aren't getting penalized at all for.
They're not, but there wasn't, it was an emerging industry without regulation,
Right,
and that we have to acknowledge that. It's not that they were necessarily doing the wrong thing, or
Right.
participating in an emerging industry that it wasn't regulated.
right. Which is why we got this discussion going a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
because we knew we were kind of already behind a little.
Yeah,
This was emerging very quickly. We hadn't gotten our ordinance in place.
right,
And so that's what, we actually worked on our ordinance for 2 years at least,
yeah,
or over 2 years. Because we knew it was something we needed to get started and get going with. I don't know what the right way is. I mean, if I was a homeowner and I thought, boy, how, I paid the $500 and now these people only have to pay this. I mean, I don't want people to be upset, but we also can't have a precedence either. So I don't know what the right thing to do is.
If you want, we could meet and talk with Mike too.
Yeah, like-
Especially if you have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Already, and then come back with a proposal next month.
I mean, hate to throw that monkey wrench in there, I agree, I think that, you're drastically shifting it, you could definitely see where it's unfair. But I don't want you to get into the situation either where you, again, like I said, I know you had dropped the fee halftime for, even if you didn't change it just to come into compliance, but you were also charging the full fee 2 years ago for that same activity. We just noticed now we're starting to get more of those, so we adjusted it to fit what the situation was now. And so you start crediting a couple of those people back, or you create some other circumstances change and then you create something else and we give credits back, I guess.
Well, I think-
It's just hard to keep up with that.
Yeah, I think most of them though, we didn't change it when we knew it was like non-conforming unless there was something else going on. And then they still pay the 500? They did, okay.
Until we have the new fee schedule.
Yeah.
I think it's probably nice to get Mr. Wendell's input, but part of this is not so much legal as it is what seems fair, but not causing more trouble than we're solving.
Right.
So I'd be fine with waiting another month and have you guys, brainstorm on it. How do you guys feel?
I'm against giving credit.
Sorry?
I'm against giving them credit.
Okay, you'd rather.
Because you're talking a lot of years out, you're talking probably bookkeeping, who gets what, when it's taken out.
And can I tell you, the worst part is, I know I won't be here in 12 years.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm out of, I'll be definitely gone, but even like people that are there now, are they gonna be here in 12 years either? And we've noticed things that we're dealing with that there's, to try to keep track of things is, we're running into things that, where did this go? Where is it? And to have to track that would be really tough.
And I do worry, and I think this is what Adam was trying to say with about setting precedents of refunding. So I think about HHS, and there are times that we can get a grant to fund a project. So that could start today, but yesterday, John Smith had to pay $500 for this assessment because we received a grant. It's free today. I don't know if we want to go down that path of, because it's free today, we're going to refund you from yesterday.
Yeah, but we could look at when we started to put together the ordinance. You said the last 2 years.
Yeah, but we of course still didn't have anything decided. We were still working on the ordinance itself, and we hadn't even decided the amount until just recently. There were amounts discussed, but we hadn't really gotten to that part in the ordinance. So we knew it wasn't gonna be a very large fee. We just hadn't really talked specifics.
I could go either way.
Yeah, I just want to make it seem like we're fair, but we're also not setting a precedence. We're down the road, we're also in trouble, but I want it to be fair, I think, as well.
Yeah.
So whatever that is, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
If there is a balance point that we
Right.
can come up with, but we can't.
Are we okay with tabling for a month?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry for throwing that.
No, it's just, you want to seem like you're fair to people though, because if I was one of those people and I just paid $500 and I thought, wow, now everybody else just has to pay 25.
It's like you're.
I did mine when I should have.
It's not a penalty though. I mean, economics change, conditions change, and macro conditions that we have nothing to do with change, dramatically change circumstances. But to be compliant with what is as it is today is the right thing. We know that.
It's kind of like inflation. I mean, anything, you go buy a vehicle before COVID and after COVID, you pay different prices. Sell your house
Or
today,
carrots.
sell your house. I mean, things change, and as much as it might seem unfair, you had to follow what your policy was. And you didn't know better, but you're learning and you're doing better and you're seeing things, but just like a coupon came out, crap, I should have waited to buy it. I should have waited to make it an Airbnb till next year, but I mean,
Yeah.
just as an outsider.
Yeah, the only difference here is we didn't have an ordinance in place. So what it was they were to get a conditional use permit, which is the $500. So we were in the process of setting up the ordinance, but this is what was the way it was supposed to work at that time. And a lot of those people should have had a conditional use permit and didn't.
Is there an ordinance to penalize them if they don't follow that?
That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, that's a whole other.
Enforcement.
If we're not wanting to do that, we're not
I'm
wanting
just
to
saying,
penalize,
like,
yeah.
But that would be.
In the short-term ordinance, short-term rental ordinance, it does have.
Right. I mean, if I paid it and someone didn't follow, I'd be mad that they didn't pay it, and you have the ordinance and you say they're gonna be penalized post-construction fees or whatever, and you don't do it. That's how you make it fair.
Yeah, in our ordinance now, we do have that once this takes place or takes effect, that if they don't get that license, then there are penalties for that.
And the next place is finding them.
Yeah, well, I get it. But
That's easy.
Just go on Google and
Mhm.
search it.
Yeah, you can search and there you are, you find out it.
Anyway, I think we
Yep,
decided we're gonna table it.
yep, and like I said, I have a discussion Thursday with
Okay.
Attorney Bedell.
Oh,
That would be good, because I think we're all kind of unsure what the suggestion should be.
do we have any correspondence? Nope. How about future agenda items? You guys want to have on their next?
Well, I think what would be good is to discuss the GIS technician position again. I mean, I know we've had that in the past where we had an ad to try to hire somebody and we had that money in the budget, but we could not find anyone. But now we've done the wage scale and the wage study, and maybe our wage would be higher where we would be able to hire somebody. Just, I guess, getting that discussion with the budget and just.
Well, that's an interesting question. When the wage study was done, did they even have GIS as one of the positions?
I think it was in a, I think there was a job description put together anyway.
We had one, a job description, because we had put in ads in the paper, for employment. So
Right.
they would have had a job description. So I guess I
I just meant when the actual wage study was done, I didn't know if they come up with a market rate for a GIS tech. I don't know if they did or not.
I don't know either.
Tricia can find that out for us. Not necessarily right now, but for next time.
Yeah.
I just think that'd be good to at least discuss that and see where we're at and see if we can get it in the budget and
And
review our needs.
yeah, and I'll talk with Julie because she learned something at a conference that I couldn't go to of possibilities, so. And I think she and I and Trish are gonna get together and we'll have some discussion then.
Okay.
Did
All
we
right.
do the LiDAR? Did we finish that, the LiDAR whole, discussion and that?
Well, we've got it's going to county board this month for the contract.
Okay.
Great. So any other future agenda items? Nope. Okay, motion to adjourn would be good.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the
Julie
meeting.
moves to adjourn.
I'll second.
Mr. Wiki says second. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourn.
See?